I wasn't recording, so I have to repeat what I just said. Hi, everybody. Starting Module 6, RES 402. Welcome, everybody. For those watching, you'll see a slide soon that's going to ask you to make sure that you watch the video, answer some of the questions, write up a Word document, and then upload it into Turnitin, so it shows as a actual event. But I'm proud of you guys. I was just commenting on, I think I'm all caught up on the grading except for week 5, which I'll be doing today and tomorrow. I should be done with week 5 for the 3 classes, I would say by Saturday. So I appreciate it. You've done some phenomenal work. A lot of things you've covered. Great discussions back and forth. You know, this is definitely something that's very, very dear to my heart. A lot of things that you guys talked about, some COPD, some have done cancer, some of y'all did CF, cystic fibrosis, which is really to my heart. I worked in the cystic fibrosis clinic, and the things that they can do today in the care for cystic fibrosis patients is phenomenal compared to when I first started in respiratory 30 years ago. The life expectancy was very, very poor. We didn't even diagnose it until really it was an early diagnosis, and it wasn't even looked at in latter parts of life, mainly because patients didn't live that long. And so some really great discussion post topics. And today what I want to do is just get straight to the PowerPoint. So I am going to start to share my screen, hopefully. And I'll go back because I want to dismiss that. Okay, and now I'm going to go share my screen. And I have to. Okay, do y'all see Module 6 Teams meetings?
Yes.
Can you see? Yes. Okay, great. Here's the objectives for our meeting today. We're going to review the 402 modules. I'm just going to talk about the topics because that's going to tie right into your final course project. You guys are getting so freaking close to the end. I think I'm going to fail you all, so you have to retake the class and stay with me longer. But of course, you know I won't do that. Look at what scholarly journals, making sure you know what scholarly journals are, elements of a respiratory care plan or just a care plan in general, and review the final course project requirements and the disclaimer down here at the beginning for those who are unable to attend, because I know you have full-time jobs and this isn't really written into most online programs or online courses. You might not see your other professors doing this. I just think it helps that first Teams meeting just to try to get you introduced to the course. So, of course, we missed the first one this semester because of passing of my dad. But the mid one, just to make sure people are on track, talk about the current topics, give you an opportunity to actually talk to me. And week 6 is to start bringing it together and talk about the final course project. There is an objective missing here, and I apologize for that. And there's one on leadership and incorporating what we've been doing into leadership and the importance of leadership as a respiratory therapist, not just on our shift or on the department, but in the community. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But those are our objectives for today, so we'll just continue on. The RES 402 topic modules, so you can see right there. You know, first off, we talked about, we wanted you to research the community and state and federal agencies that, you know, that you need to be familiar with, because it's going to help you with your research, final research paper, your summative paper, and talked about epidemiological models. What are some of the community risk factors? Air quality, the importance of air quality and how it relates to care. Community and risk development, which was last week. Your epidemiological findings specific to a disease state for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about direct interventions, and then your summative project is going to be the community health, a specific community health project that we're going to be looking at. And again, you tying them all together, and if you looked at each week, and you could do that from the syllabus, or you could look at each week in news and announcements when I talk about the objectives. Those are the student learning objectives for that unit. And then you have course learning objectives for the whole course. And then you have program learning objectives for the whole course, for the whole program, I should say, program learning objectives for the whole program. And for this course, that's what we've been covering. So when somebody would say, well, what's on the summative project? It's this stuff right here, okay? You should be able to pull information from each one of these units to come up with your summative project on community health. I'm going to go into more detail with that. I haven't made a video yet for it, but I will be, and I'll be giving you an example. My example is going to be asthma, and I want you to kind of see what and where I'm going when it comes to that summative project. Now, for me, I chose asthma. For you, I want you to be thinking about your capstone topic, okay? That you declared. You're using each one of the units, each of the modules, final course project, hopefully is helping you develop your final program capstone project, which will be RES 410. I do have to tell you, I apologize. I've left my bird. I have a little green cheek conure. I have a cage here in my office. I bring her out in the sun. There's another one in my den, and I should have put her in a den, so she might squawk a little bit. So I apologize up front. Instructional patient protocol. That's one of our objectives for this week, and we're talking about the essential elements, and we're looking at the initial assessment. What is your assessment of the patient history, inspection, palpation, percussion, auscultation, and any of the future things that you need to do so that you can develop that care plan, that respiratory care plan for the specific pathological process that you've talked about or that you're focusing in on. Now, I know we have people that are from at least 3 different places on this phone call. I want to ask you all, what's included in your care plans, your respiratory care plans at your facility? Pick what are the basic elements.
Well, one thing we focus on is like certain age and specific areas, and then we have in our care plan like structure of what we can do, like far as like preset orders and stuff, because we don't like the cookie cut, so we kind of have it where therapists like far as like bronchial hygiene and stuff, therapists can kind of drive with what we have here available and what we need to use to help our patients.
Okay.
So kind of what we do here.
How about you, Joanna?
I have noticed that a lot of our protocols followed the flow chart or algorithm model. We do have some of the written out ones, but they tend to be, for whatever reason, harder to access. What we have available to us is, like I said, mostly algorithms.
And Jody, how about at your facility?
Sir, I compare some of the ones I've seen with MUSC to like the ones that we've been posting in our 403 class, because that's kind of where we focus and with Dr. Aliewine with a lot of oxygen protocols and incentive spirometry protocols. We all been kind of working on that in our discussion post, and I've learned a lot from looking at everybody else's, and I've seen where I'll just say some of the ones I've seen on the MUSC website need some attention compared to the ones I've seen my fellow colleagues post on the discussion site. So, covering the specifics, the authority, exactly what you're going to do step by step. It's it needs work, sir, based off what I've seen at my hospital.
Well, that's exactly one of the benefits of working in a cohort. I just did that with the last group in RES 333. And where we were talking about emergency preparedness and staffing patterns, and talking about how do you develop a staffing pattern or a staffing plan, pardon me, for each facility. And how does a shift decide that it needs 5 therapists rather than 6? What's the difference between a day and night shift or a weekend shift staffing pattern? And then how does the surge all relate to that? That interaction between, the several different facilities on that phone call, they were having a discussion amongst themselves. I literally almost fell back and was just watching the discussion unfold, and they were sharing ideas. And that's what we would hope that you're doing here. As you mentioned, this is always going to be a work in progress. Evidence-based medicine is something that is never going to be the same. It changes as new data comes in. We look at it differently, a different set of eyes, and then we find out that, like you go back to my day, using 10 to 15 mLs per kg for tidal volumes, where the average tidal volume was 1,000 cc's for a patient. That would just blow you guys out of the water. Using side breaths. What are you talking about? But changing ventilator circuits every day. Evidence-based medicine changes. And so what you're identifying, Jody, is something that we would hope that we would continue to see amongst yourselves, and sharing that information with each other. As for what you've already shared, the 3 of y'all and those who are watching the video, that initial assessment, that first time the patient is seen, you're identifying things, things that you can see, things that you can touch, things that you can test. You're looking at the life functions. If you have the ability to get the patient history, you want to get the patient history and to see what is contributing to where the patient is right now. And then you have to have a good understanding of the pathophysiology, the pathology of the disease processes themselves. And when you put that all together, then you can kind of get an idea when you finally do have that diagnosis for the patient. You have a better idea of what or where the patient is going and what interventions need to be done to help have the most favorable patient outcome. So, the elements of a care plan, okay, and here is the elements of a shared care plan. You got your current state, the patient's individual situation, the background, the demographics, the functioning, the medication use. What is their usual treatment? What medications are they taking right now? And who's involved in the care? My dad, every time we met a new person, it was a list of all the medications. Every time we went to the emergency room, it was bring all your medications. Who are you seeing? Who's involved in the care? And that's a unique challenge in today's society, where a large segment of our population, their primary care is done through the emergency department. Looking at the goals and concerns. What does the patient need? What does the patient value? What are the patient expectations? Where do they hope to be? What is their outcome, that directives? I know, like with my dad, my dad and mom were very specific. They understood where their age was. They understood when they went in, when my dad first got the diagnosis of cancer, and he spoke to the whole family in a big Teams like meeting, a Zoom, and he said, I understand I have stage 3 cancer. but God's brought me here. And we're going to do everything we can do. Your mom and I are going to pick the best doctors, best hospital, and we're going to fight this. We're going to do, that's my family's mentality. Life is precious. You fight for it, you move forward, but not always is the outcome what you expect. And that's where we work. But that expectation, the patient preference, and like the advanced directives, that is sometimes a challenge at the hospitals. During the final days of my father, every time I went in there with him, and I wasn't there that last week because I was sick. I thought I had COVID. Believe it or not, I really did, but I was negative. It was known on his chart. We made it very known. Dad was a full code. Okay. We believed that God would allow him to go, and we would be, if he stayed, he stayed. But that was their mindset. My mom's a registered nurse, critical care and registered nurse. So they understood. And, during that last time, I got a phone call the night. It must have been about 10 o'clock at night. And it was the physician calling saying that my father wouldn't wear his BiPAP. My mother had just left. Wouldn't wear his BiPAP anymore, and his SATs are dropping into the 50s. And what should we do? Well, I knew it had to be a resident of some sort, because what my father had been wearing that mask. He's air hungry. He's air starved. He has cancer. He was becoming septic. He was actually an ARDS. But what was his advanced directive? My mother and him. His desire, my mother's desire, was for the DNR. I'm like, why are you calling me? He has an advanced directive. Put the tube in. He was hoping that I was going to say, don't do anything. He's got stage 3 cancer, or 4 cancer probably by that point. He's septic. He's doing this or that. No, we value, in this country, we value the goals and the concerns. We put our patients' preferences up front, and we want the preferred outcome. But we really do understand that sometimes patients get better because of what we do, and sometimes patients get worse and die, even though we've done it, in spite of what we've done. So that makes us have to look at actions and interventions, and we have to specialize that to the patient and, identify what strategies we want to take in that situation. And that's going to take doing an appropriate evaluation of the patient now, their progress, what successes we've had, what struggles, and are they really participating at the level that they need? So we have to be aware of how the patient is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Simple things when you have some of those preventative medicines for asthma, and it requires the patient to have a certain level of inspiratory flow, and you find out, they're taking their inhaler and they don't have enough inspiratory flow, well, then they can't get the med in. Or, you ask the patient, well, how are you taking your med? Well, you're supposed to take that caplet, drop it in, and then close it. That pops the caplet, and then they suck it. And then they get the medicine in their lungs. And then when you ask the patient, well, how have you been taking the med? And they say they pop it in their mouth and they drink it with some water. Finding out where the patient is and what they're doing. Qualifying, I'm having difficulty with my oxygen. My SATs are going down. I can't feel the oxygen. If they're on an oxygen concentrator at home, is it even hooked up properly? Some patients have 30 feet of oxygen tubing. Did it come disconnected? A simple thing is just take the oxygen, ask them to take the oxygen and put it inside a bottle and a glass of water. Does it bubble? No. If it doesn't bubble, we got to check all the way down, all the way back to the connection. It's probably become disconnected. But things that we can do and help and learn and teach the patient has to be part of that care plan. But we have to understand the disease process, the pathology that we're dealing with. Well, what does that mean? That means for you and I, thinking as future leaders, as managers of the patient's care, what is that role? Okay. What is the role of the leaders to make sure that that is getting out there to the people that's necessary? Okay. if you're the respiratory therapist and you're taking care of the patient and they're a known asthmatic, do they know how to use a peak flow meter effectively? Very routine, very elementary for us, but most people don't do that well. You know, looking at some of your discussion posts, and one that's coming right to mind right now is Christy, yours, talking about exposure to dust. Can you want to share a little bit about that? Because, you know, patients that are not complying with, you know, proper wearing of PPE equipment, or it was your post, wasn't it?
You're talking about silica and
Yeah.
silicosis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just post that. What exactly are you wanting?
Just
Me to-
just talking about the role of the education,
Okay.
you know, and
So-
patients doing what they're supposed to do. And I think it was also Sadia who did something on silica exposure. And, you know, one of the things was poor patient compliance. They weren't wearing the PPEs that they were supposed to be wearing.
That is correct. What we have looked at, especially through occupational medicine, different things with industry sending employees in, was actually, you know, if the material is there, the PPE and stuff for them, are they using it? Because even in the world we're working at, we find people not wanting to be compliant and wear what they're supposed to, and they don't realize how bad they're putting themselves in harm. And one thing we looked at in the industries with the plants was, and just not the plants, we have a lot of mason workers around here, cement plants and stuff that mix mortar, and people do it at home. If you do it over time, you're breathing in that silica, which is a mineral of fine dust, and you're inhaling it. Well, then the side thing is you start developing idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis from this. And what we're seeing is all these plant workers coming into the hospital sick with no history of any lung. And what we're finding is they have pulmonary fibrosis, and it's mainly a form of silicosis that could have been prevented. And over time, them just not wanting to be bothered and it was inconvenient has now damaged them. And their life expectancy is very slim, like 3 to 5 years after diagnosis.
And
So it all could have been prevented actually with the proper gear. And DHEC and OSHA, they're really cranking down trying to work on the filtrations. The problem is most of our people in this area, that is their way of life. And they live close due to cost and transportation. So not only are they at risk when they violate the ventilation regulations, they're also putting their community at risk.
And the other activities that our patients involve themselves in, you know, contribute. And thinking about how, you know, you have that patient population, and they smoke on top of that, and how that contributes to the worsening of the patient's lung, you know, issues, the pulmonary fibrosis. You know, I look at my uncle. My uncle Don died last year of IPF, and I don't know if you all know or not, but I've been a NIOSH spirometry trainer. And Christy, it was really kind of funny. How long ago, Christy, was it? Maybe like 7, 8 years ago?
It was probably about 5 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I actually came to her.
You're awesome.
I came and I did a class, a 3-day class for her and her staff on NIOSH for spirometry, and, you know, helping people understand the minimum standards, because just even spirometry and how it's done, you'll believe it's varies from facility to facility, and it shouldn't. There are ATS and ERS standards that say, you know, about your equipment, about the test and repeatability and reproducibility, you know, and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable when it comes to spirometry. And then, you know, what and how do we train these caregivers? Some of the things that you mentioned, Christy, and I want to give some others an opportunity to share too is there was the video. I don't know if you remember the video I shared. If I find it, I'll share it with the group. But there was an elderly gentleman at the very end of this video. He talks about working in the coal mines and having black lung. And he reminded me of my dad. So respectful, so company man, talked about the greatness of the equipment, the greatness of the company, and how the equipment worked real well. And in that video, also saw that like all the coal miners were coming out and their faces were all dirty. Okay, you saw the whites around this area, their face, nose and mouth, and it would show that the dirty environment that they were in, and they have these scrubbers, these water scrubbers that would try to reduce the dust that was being kicked up, and then the respirators, if they wore them, would prevent the exposure. But as Christy mentioned, over a long time, long term, many days and months and years of exposure, that stuff builds up in your lungs. And yes, as a young person, you feel invincible and you're able to do anything. And, you know, sometimes they're not compliant. They don't wear the masks. They're not worried about it. This elderly gentleman was just so great. He goes, just remember, everybody who's going out there, you can wash the things off of your face, the dirt off of your face, but you can't wash the dust, the coal dust, the silica, the cotton dust, all of that stuff. You can't wash that out of your lungs. It becomes part of your lungs. And, you know, and it shows a credit at the end where this gentleman did pass away. He was never qualified. He never qualified for the lung transplant before he passed away. But I want to give you guys another opportunity, you know, the role of management, the role of leaders, this important opportunity for the leader to help, you know, our staff members to understand our job in the hospital, our job to know really about these disease processes and the equipment and the education side, so that we can help our staff members know that. We can also train our coworkers, meaning like nurses and physicians, and then our patients, and have this instructional protocol out there so that our patient outcomes can be improved. And so again, it's about improving patient care outcomes. But Joanna, you did yours. Yours was on wildfires, was that right?
Yes, it was. It was
Okay.
specifically on the campfire in California that happened 3 years ago now, I think.
Uh-huh. And I know that's a little off, but because it's talking about smoke inhalation, can't remember which paper, but do you know if California had any kind of, because it's such a reoccurring event, did they have any system in place that talks about air quality, making the community aware of air quality?
They have vast systems in place because air quality seems to be paramount for some reason out there. That's actually something that was I was curious about, noticing that most of the cities that were on the state of the air that we read a few units ago were Western cities. And I assume it's a combination of things like engine combustion and also natural events like wildfires.
And, you know, we get these reports. I mean, as I can't remember again, read so many, sometimes I get stir crazy, but I think it might have been Jody talking about ozone. Is that right, Jody?
I'm sorry, sir. Which one was it?
Didn't one of your papers or your discussion posts, we're talking about wildfires and air quality and being alert, and there's vast systems like out on the West Coast, but you were talking about being aware, I believe, of ozone alerts, and then talking about not only on the outside of the homes that we have to be concerned about. I believe you're talking about inside. You know.
Oh, yes, sir. It was.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. I'd read about when you brought that up and we were working on that subject. I was reading about homes and actually how people cook in their homes and using wood stoves. Uh, some folks are using kerosene heaters to actually keep their house heated, and you can smell that kerosene or it gets within the home. Wood stoves, outside camping products when you're outside camping in the field. I know I've been exposed to a lot of that in the military, the way we did business back in the older military, I could say. I know things have changed now where everybody gets to stay in a building, but I can remember camping out and smelling them fumes and being overseas and smelling different products over there that made me really think about the air pollution and the things that we were studying.
And it was a different mentality. It wasn't that they, hopefully, you know, the leadership is being forthcoming and doing the ethically, being ethical and moral about their decisions and caring about the people that they lead, which I'm just always going to take the positive side on that. But we learn. We learn by looking back and what did we do then and what can we do differently as we move forward. Kind of like I mentioned with the tidal volumes for ventilators or vent circuit changes. I look back now and say, boy, how many patients did I probably help contribute to their demise? But what was I doing? I was doing what was at the time the evidence-based best practice. And so as leaders, future leaders of respiratory care, being part of your national organizations, being a part of your state organizations, making sure you're reading. If you're really into, like I get a cystic fibrosis email, it looks like, and it's supposed to be just a monthly newsletter, but it seems like it's coming every week, different changes in the care for cystic fibrosis. But to get part of, the information flow, and because as leaders, we have to help take that information and share it. Share it not just with students, and if you're a preceptor, sharing it with our fellow class members and here, fellow workers, with our family members in our community. There is a role. Sharing it with our patients, making sure that they understand, and not having, not looking at your role as being, oh, I'm just a respiratory therapist, and I'm not saying that negatively. I don't want you to think small. I want you to be thinking bigger. Your impact is greater than you think. Your role is more than just giving out breathing treatments. Every time you get in front of a patient, every time you meet somebody, you have an opportunity to change their day, to make it a better day. And I was raised that it's your obligation, it's your God-given responsibility to do that. Give 100% of whatever you have and you put it out there. And if you do 100% of whatever you have and you give it and that's it, then you know what? That's all you can do. And then tomorrow, maybe you have more to give. Today, maybe you only have 50%. You're going to get 100% of my 50% that I have available. Tomorrow, I might have 75%. And this group, even talking about you three that are four on the line, your posts are amazing. Okay. Your activity papers are excellent. Excellent. Okay. I mean, you should see, I'm probably putting a little less comments on your papers because you learn that skill set. Also share it. Okay. But thinking in terms of this class, this topic, respiratory care plans, pathology, the role of the therapist with the patient, that is a leadership role. I want you to be thinking back, okay? Think back to the remembering, and I think it was RES 312, the 12 types of leadership styles. You remember those? Do you remember which ones that you liked? What kind of leadership style do you like? The way you would want to be led? at first, a lot of people chose Democratic. Was somebody going to talk? Please do.
I'm not
Well, I
sure
was
which
gonna say
one I
yes.
would. I probably fit all of them.
It's so funny you said that. How about you, Jody?
So I like the Democratic the best out of the group. I can recall that course we took on that. I did like the Democratic the best.
Okay. And Joanna, what was yours? Do you remember?
So I hate to say this, I don't. I want to say it was. I want to say it was collaborative, though. Not 100% sure if that's the right word.
Yeah, well, some probably a teamwork, team leadership, where people all kind of come together. When I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the 12 different leadership styles, Christy made the comment, and I promise you we didn't have a previous conversation about this, but based on the situation, and now that you have all of these classes under your belt that you've already been working past and towards and finished, you can kind of see where almost all of these 12 leadership styles are appropriate at one time or another, depending on the situation that you're in. To be able to help facilitate good patient care education, requires the leadership to make that a primary goal in the department. You're responsible. We need to do this. Education, patient education is best done not just at the day of discharge, but as a process as they're working their way while they're in the hospital. Looking at these 12 different leadership styles, what would be best for the patient? Thinking I'm over here, a coaching. Wouldn't you think coaching leadership style would be appropriate? Helping the patient to understand and then helping them demonstrate.
That was my
it.
favorite, was coaching.
You coaching?
Yes, that was my favorite. Kind of with Democratic though at the same time.
Who's that?
That's Heather. I have a
Oh,
mask
Heather,
on,
how
sorry.
you doing? Good, I'm glad you're here. But you look at all of these different leadership styles, the only one out of all of these here that I've really, I see very limited value is the laissez-faire. That hands off, not doing nothing, because you probably are not really striving for much then either. If it's a hands off, if you have direct goals, if you have something you're striving for, a patient care outcome, you're going to be investigating, you're going to understand the disease process, the pathology, you're going to understand all of the elements that we've already discussed today, and you're going to be working towards trying to develop the appropriate care plan, and you're going to put it into action. You're going to evaluate the results of what you're doing. You're going to make modifications because why? You want the best patient care outcome. And then you put it all together and you have these protocols that you're talking about that you're doing, like in Dr. Allawine's class. All the different protocols, those AARC protocols and the clinical practice guidelines. I tell students all the time, it's a CPG, it's a clinical practice guideline. It's not a mandate. Facilities can modify, but as a leader, you need to be thinking leader. You need to think like a leader. And so that's kind of where I want to do, is to talk about the 5 levels of leadership, because you guys are getting towards the end of this program. If you're a level 1, and most of us don't like these kind of leaders, they believe a level 1 leader, people will follow you because they have to. I'm your boss, do it. That's it. I'm the director, do it. No one likes that type of a boss for the most part. Okay? Level 2, people follow you because they want to. You have built a relationship. And that's hard. to have a relationship requires two people to agree and to want to have the relationship. If one party does not want to have the relationship, you're not going to have it. And it's going to fail. So you have to find a way to connect. Level 3, you hear it talks about people will follow you because of what you've done for the organization. You have a proven track record, and they respect that. Level 4, people follow you because what you've done for them. That's such an important part. You think about the people that you work with, the people that you respect. You know that the professors, the supervisors, the teachers, could be parents or uncles, the people who, you know what, when you needed the help, they were there. You knew that they were trying their best. Maybe they weren't successful, but they were trying their best for you, and you could rely on them because you were there for them and what you do for them. You help them be a better version of them. You help them create a better version of them. That's what you want to do for your patients. That's what you want to do for the other care workers that you're working with, for your staff members, for you future leaders, for all of your teammates, those who are going to be working with you, that you're going to be leading. But the pinnacle is up at the top. That is the respect. Okay, people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. Your integrity, your value system. I love reading books, okay? And this is coming from 5 Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. I don't know if any of y'all have ever read any Maxwell books. Phenomenal. Here are some, okay, that I have read, okay? Becoming a Leader, The Servant Leader, one of my favorites. This one here, The Laws of Leadership. That one actually I read at the hospital where I worked with when I was a director and assistant director and staff therapist. But when I was at the director level, at that point, it was Rob Colonis who was the CEO. Actually, he was the executive vice president, and I reported to Marie Seegers. She was my vice president, and there was a big push with all the leadership, this book club. And it was all about learning to think like a leader. And that's what the title of this slide is. To be a leader, then you need to think like a leader. Okay? It all starts by thinking something. If you start to think about something, you will have a better opportunity of getting to where you want to go. You're in this BSRT program because somewhere in the past you had this thought, I want to get my bachelor's degree in respiratory. And that thought with action became a reality. Okay? And so you build this goal, you help find somebody who's already done it and you help them. That's what we're doing in respiratory. That's what I'm asking you to do with this, this respiratory care plan, this protocol that we're developing in this week 6, this project that you're working on for this week. This one over here, Fish, is talking about motivation. The importance of being excited about doing what you do, that what you do matters. It's not just another thing. I thank God for my mom and dad telling me, wherever you go, you have an opportunity to impact others. And it's now not only that way, it's by phone, it's by Zoom classes and Teams meetings, it's by what you write and what you don't write. It's by voting and not voting. If you don't vote, that's the same thing as voting. Get out there. If you want to be a leader, think like a leader. Now, I know there's a bunch here. There are so many different references, different books, but these are just a couple that I shared. Military leadership, I love it. In a lot of different ways because I like the constraints. I like the concrete areas. Things are clear. I love coaching. Coaching I love because coaches break it down. The coaches want the same thing the player wants. They want them to play the position that they're on the team and do it well. Execute your play. Know the playbook. If you do that, then you're good. That's why I say every Monday, news and announcements. That's my playbook for the week. You got it in the syllabus. Why do I have to do it? Other instructors don't do that. I want you to know the play. And I really believe that repetition helps. And being available to help people identify if they're missing something, they know how to reach you so that you can listen and you can help them. And that was Rob Colonis. He actually ended up going from executive vice president to the CEO. Marie Seegers went up to executive vice president. You know, their leadership style was just unbelievable for me, and the things I learned. And I still see them. I still communicate with them. Actually go to church with Rob. And it's just a phenomenal gift if you're able to share. And the two things that he shared with, I feel like I'd say me, but it was all these other directors and vice presidents. And that was, he wanted to develop a culture of no blame. He said, we don't learn unless we are willing to own up to our mistakes. And when we own up to our mistakes, where our shortcomings are, we're going to find out others have those same shortcomings. They've made those same mistakes. And then when you acknowledge the mistake, you have the opportunity to collaboratively come up with a plan, a game plan to make that negative now a positive. And then the second one was becoming a servant leader. A servant leader gives. A servant leader does not look at the situation as here on this slide. Servant leader has the pyramid upside down because traditional leadership, okay, leadership starts at the top and it funnels down, trickles down. The leader tells management what they want. Management tells employees what they want. And then the employees tell the customers. It's a command and control, this traditional leadership. And that is the value stream. And where are the values there? It's at the bottom. But when you look at the servant leader, the leader is at the bottom. They understand what it means, that their role means. And for a servant leader, they know that they're serving the people who are following them. And so that servant leader is going to be working to help management. They're there to help management who's helping employees, who's helping the customers. And the value stream then is at the top. And this is all about support and development. That's not just in our staff members, not just in our departments, but it's at the patient bedside. It's understanding these disease processes. It's understanding the pathology. It's understanding the pharmacology. Okay? And you go back to that slide, in a servant leader, there's 10 qualities. They got to be a good listener. They got to be compassionate, wanting to help heal. They want to be empathetic. Try to get into what does that patient really feel? What does that staff member feel? What are those people going through when they come to work every day? What are they feeling and experiencing? They're conceptualizing, thinking. They're aware of themselves and their own limitations, or maybe some of their mindset is incorrect. Sometimes I say the statement, sometimes you need a checkup from the neck up. It's your brain. You need to rethink. You need to reprogram your head because you can. Because how many times did you think you couldn't do this program? I can't do it, but you did it. I can't write these papers. You are. You stepped up and we can help others. We can help persuade others to encourage them to be that coach. We can help build a stronger community by sharing these educational plans, by sharing our knowledge about the pathology. Guarantee nurses only get about 2 weeks of respiratory education in the associate degree program. You know, you need to be thinking futuristically, okay, foresight, what's going to happen? I don't have enough time to talk to you for another hour about that, but this COVID pandemic has now changed the way healthcare is given. And some of it might be positive, and a lot of it we need to rethink, because what is quality care now? Think about how your assignments are made. Think about RVUs or how your treatment loads are set up. You know, does anybody here, real quickly, do you guys have any kind of productivity statistics that you have to give to your supervisor, that you are, to be an effective respiratory therapist, you should have so many, you should be 90% productive. Anybody hear anything like that, or aware of any of that in your facilities?
Yes, we have been having to log our time in our stabilization unit for newborns to prove that, you know, we are down there and we are helping out with the delivery, doing what we need to do. It's an extra piece of paperwork for us that is at times very frustrating.
And it is, but I commend them to want to see it. I commend them because they're being a good steward. This is the last one down here. Stewardship of the resources. Are we using people effectively? That's our most valuable resource. All these facilities, all these wonderful big hospitals, never ever has brick and mortar ever saved a life.
Well,
It's the people.
Professor Al, what we do is we do a head count in the morning, like what our workloads look like total, and then we report, and then I report up to VPs at a higher level, and then at the end of the day, we'll have them kind of like Joyce was saying, they'll fill out their productivity sheet, and then we'll see how much over that they actually did than where they started. And then we feed that. And that helps with FTEs and stuff too later down the line.
Excellent.
So with COVID, you would never think we'd be oxygen therapists, but I'm telling y'all, that's about what we're doing right now with all these COVIDs on high flows and stuff. I mean, we walked in and we're already up to 13 ventilators. We may be down to 4 tomorrow. We never know. And we can't really staff, appropriately, because we never know when hell's going to break on us.
And that's exactly what the previous discussion was thinking about proper staffing patterns. That you remember back when we took the class and it talked about preparing disaster management, talking about the surge. You remember hearing about preparing for the surge of patients? Well, respiratory has always worked like that. Because our mindset is we just get the job done. Right? Whatever resources, we get the job done. But you said it, Christy. You prioritize and
prioritize and just jump in and do it. We run our own triage internal.
Exactly. But now I'm asking you as the new leaders for the moving forward, you're the future leaders. Some of you are already leaders. Moving forward, we need to be thinking, was some of the things that we did, like Jody mentioned, the leadership in the military, maybe they made some decisions, but they didn't have the knowledge that they have now, and they've changed some of their actions, and it's probably benefited for better outcomes in the health of their servicemen and women. We have the same opportunity. If we go out there and we have a workload, this is 25 years ago, at least. I can remember we worked with a respiratory value unit, RVUs. One RVU is worth 1 minute. All the procedures were tallied up and given a certain value, a classification. Of breathing treatments 15 minutes, event checks 10 minutes, something like that. And then you were assigned a workload, and like for a 12-hour shift, you had 720 RVUs. Okay, great. Well, I heard people come back and they say, I was 125% productive today. And I probably heard it a couple times. And then one time I just said, you know how foolish that sounds? You can't be 100%, 125% productive. You can only be 100%. There is no more than 100%. You can fill a glass of water up only to the top. You keep on filling it. It's no longer a glass of water. It's water in the glass and all over the table. Something is being spilled. It's being missed. You're not meeting your objective. And so I would say you had to give some crappy care out there. Where was the quality? Now, I'm not saying that, okay? I'm not pushing or I'm asking you to think differently. Okay? Because moving forward, respiratory has always been in that mindset. I can get it done. I can get it done. Come on, guys, pull it in. All of a sudden, your shift leader's taking a full load. Your lead therapist or your supervisor is taking a full load plus on top of their other responsibilities. And how long can that work? There's a whole section on burnout that we talk about. So I want you to be thinking about that and, you know, what it means to be a leader, you know, and the type of leader that you would want to be. You know, I got this quote from one of my favorite instructional pastors. I never met him or anything, just online and listened to him. And he talks about servanthood does not nullify a leader. To be a servant doesn't mean you're not a leader. It defines it. And here it says Jesus does not cease to be the Lion of Judah when he becomes the lamb-like servant of the church. When you're a dad or you're a mom, you've given up your life for your family. Okay? Why? Because you love them. You care for them. And I can promise you, when I hear some of you in leadership position, I hear that love and that concern for your staff members and how you would fight for them. That's the servant. And that's the way, you know, Jody, being in the military, you'd want somebody who's going to be a foxhole buddy, who's got your back regardless. You know, that's important. For your final course project, because I know we're out of time, you're going to be creating a summative project that will assess and evaluate a community health concern. Okay? You're going to have to use statistical data from an agency, from, you know, at first unit, the agencies that identifies and analyzes a specific pathological process, hopefully one that you can use for that you're maybe working on for your capstone project that you identified early on, that shows endemic reoccurrences, that it continues and it becomes more widespread. You're going to summarize the risk factors for that specific pathological process, and then you're going to talk about the elements of concern for developing the disorder. You're going to produce an assessment and treatment protocol, which we're talking about now, and the stuff that you're doing in 403 will help. That will best facilitate, will give the patient the best care for that specific pathological process that we're talking about. You're going to evaluate the effectiveness of the respiratory care interventions as a methodology of care for that specific methodology, pathological process. And before I go to that, I was going to switch. Actually, I'll go to that screen and then I'll show the other thing. It's one of the true quotes I just love from Douglas MacArthur. Okay, a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. What is your heart? What are you striving for? What do you want to become? Look at these classes, pull them together, see how they can be helpful for those that you serve, not just here, but in our community. I said I would promise you I would show you one more thing. Let me see if I can get it. Oh boy. Okay, so go back to Teams. So like this one, this was the discussion post for this week. Explain a pathological process and potential interventions associated with an increasing awareness to minimize risk of proliferation of a condition. Explain that condition that you've chosen. Explain the process and the in-depth interventions that are necessary. And you can see here how I did asthma. And then I talk about what it is. Then I talk about the airflow limitation are caused by what? Bronchoconstriction, airway edema, airway hyperresponsiveness. Talk about airway remodeling. Okay, there is no cure for asthma, but the symptoms can be controlled with effective asthma treatment and management. I talk about some of the drugs, quick relief, oral and IV corticosteroids. And then there are new things that maybe all don't know, but there's some new biologics that are being used to treat some severe or difficult to treat asthma on a regular basis, which is listed there. And of course, you got a couple of links to my research leads. So think about it, pull it together, think about where you are in the program, because you're right at the cusp. You're graduating soon. You're the future leaders. I definitely am super proud of you guys for what you've already done, what you're accomplishing. For those who have been watching the video, like I said in the very first slide, please watch the video, write a summary, Word document. Then I'd ask you to answer any of the questions that you see, and then save it and then upload it to turn it in for me. That makes it a lot easier. You can't imagine, and I'm not complaining, but when I have 3 different groups, I'm actually teaching 7 classes this semester, 7 different groups, probably somewhere in the lines of 90 students. And if I can go to one tool, like turn it in and just see everything, it's great. But if I'm having to go back and forth and check the internet, check email, download it, put it on in a file, then upload it over here, I have to switch. And when you multiply that out, it's not really time efficient. So using the tool is the best way for time efficiency. And if you have any difficulties using the tool, let me know. If you're missing any other assignments, please let me know. Realize too that during the course, if you had the option to do a quiz or do a test, or do a quiz or do the paper, I might not have, like if you did the quiz, it still shows that maybe your activity paper is still open. You don't have to do it. I have to close that out manually. Okay. If it automatically gave you a grade of a 0 and put an F in there, you know it. If you did the quiz and you did great, you're not going to have to worry about it. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that 0. And of course, if you have any concerns, you need something more concrete, send me an email of your concerns and I'll answer each one of those concerns as necessary. Again, super proud of you. Please continue to be careful out there. Even if you're vaccinated, I'm hearing we've had a couple fellow therapists in our programs, still getting that new Delta variant, getting sick. So be careful, use your PPEs, and know that I'm here to help you. And I pray for you guys, and I'm really thankful that you're in the program. And my last thought to you is, can you imagine having all of your coworkers with the mindset of working as a servant leader with the knowledge that you're gaining from this BSRT program? That's what we want. That's why we want to try to get the word out about this BSRT program, and why we want to make sure students are enrolled and work in our program, and why we believe our program is one of the best for our South Carolina RRTs, because we understand the workload. We work with you, and you guys all know that. If you can't, you work with us, and we work with you. So that's what we're hoping for. Proud of you. And if anybody has any questions or anything, please hang out. If you're not, you're good to go. And just thanks for being here, and thanks for what you do for us.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Y'all have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Professor Dunphy, I do have a question.
Sure. 1 second. Just make sure everybody's off. I'm going to stop recording.